Okay, I'll just start by apologizing and saying that I am going to respond here in a somewhat technical fashion to Loreno's video called Operative Intentionality. And the way that I'm going to, I guess, frame that response is I'm going to post a link in the underbar to both Loreno's video and this video that was posted by a New Scientist called Hand Control. Now, I thought the hand control video was just such a great example of the recent developments of technology that are able to use various forms of representation to accomplish a function that is served in humans that that same function is done very differently. Okay? Now if you go to Loreno's video, part of Loreno's question is about the operative intentionality that's talked about in phenomenology. Operative intentionality is set in contrast to a thetic intentionality or intentionality of act, and this comes from Husserl, and it basically means a subject positing itself over against an object that's predicated in an analytic and I guess you basically thematically and through a clear and explicit logic, you predicate a substance. And it's also very much aligned with representational thought, where a person is over there and has some sort of representation. Now, operative intentionality is much more, as Lorena was suggesting, it is this sort of, as Stewart and Dreyfus say, it's a mindless everyday coping. When they say mindless, they mean, again, it's not positing representations by an abstract ego that's using representations to wend its way through the world, but instead it's a kind of temporality that Dasein projects as possibilities. See, Dasein is its disclosure, and as its disclosure, that's the way that the worldhood of the world sort of maintains an intelligibility. Right? I mean, these are the sort of the Heideggerian ways of talking about it. That the again, if I look down, and see, this is one of Heidegger's examples. If I look down and I see a hammer, and the hammer has like a hairline crack in it, and I can see just in a moment's instant that that hammer is not going to be serviceable to my task, that it will likely break, or that it's broken. Now, when I say it's broken, I'm not talking about brokenness as a predicate property of the hammer, even though that's what the expression sort of seems like it would mean. When the person thinks, oh, the hammer is broken, they're not looking at it and deducing or assessing a quality that the hammer has. Instead, they, as temporality, right? Dasein is temporality. Dasein projects possibilities upon the hammer, and in projecting possibilities, the brokenness gets disclosed. Right? Its unserviceability appears as a property of the hammer only because I can project possibilities upon it. Again, I apologize. I realize all this is very technical to someone who's perhaps not familiar with Heidegger. And this, again, if this is for Heideggerians only or something. And I think the point would be that when people want to talk about subject-object split, the subject-object split problem for Heidegger is basically addressed in terms of temporality. Instead of trying to address again how some subject is representing some world or some state of relations that are out there, you try to deal with the original or originary disclosure of the world itself. How does the world show itself? Now, I think what many people do is they take their imagination or their thought about the world independent of people, and then they go, that's the real world, and then they cover over the slow emergence of the Dasein and the clearing of the there. That is basically what it means to slowly emerge to oneself in thrownness of socio-historical conditions. So, I mean, I think what basically happens is we each sort of emerge into a kind of life set of life practices, and it's because we're ecstatical temporality, because we can appropriate the past in a way that allows us to also project possibilities upon the future. The world shows itself to us with a certain kind of intelligibility. I mean, when I even look at this pen, it seems to have an orientation. I mean, the pen isn't just an object in space. I see it and recognize it as a tool, as a with which and an in order to, and the structure of my hand and its structure are, they're mutually implied in the temporality that allows a gathering and a being toward with, by way of the pen. What was so fascinating about this video that was posted by New Scientist called Hand Control, and please check this out, Loreno, and I think other people who are Heideggerians, I'm sure they would find this interesting as well, that as amazing as this video is, and it really does show the way that computers are now going to, in function, be able to rival some of the capacities that human hands can do and human hand manipulation is able to do. It's doing it by translating it into a cognitive representing. And see, this is why I think the reason in the history of philosophy that people have often slipped into subject object orientations when they've tried to deal with temporal problems is that you do, I guess you can translate back and forth. And so they're now teaching computers how to take what amount to be temporal orientations and temporal problems for the being of the human, and they will turn it into some kind of representational code sequence that the computer can do through graphic representation and then quick translating it into a sequence. That issue to me is quite interesting. Now, I guess the computer, for Loreno's original question of is that still mindless? Yeah, I think the computer is always going to be mindless, or is it not? I mean, I think the question of what will be the status of computers when they're able to, with a kind of representational translation and operations that could be best be described as logic rules and strict adherence to those rules in a cognitive representational paradigm, how will that meet or challenge some of what we really mean by the very temporality that we are? Will those computers that are able to do that, will they experience themselves as aging? Will they experience themselves as part of an unfolding? Or will they just see themselves as things that are representing the world over there? I mean, I guess there are really interesting questions of what the meaning of self-aware robots will be if that day ever comes. And will the robots that are able to accurately represent what we would just do non-thematically or in a prethetic way, are they doing that mindlessly or not? Okay, so those would be some thoughts for Loreno. Thanks, great video.